Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. Doesn't it feel good to be with one another? Yeah. My name is Tony Fisher. I serve this congregation as minister. Always grateful for that, but grateful for you mostly, and your energy and your hopefully optimism amid many things. I have a couple of things that I'm grateful for this morning. I've never done this, but I'm extremely grateful for my wife, Gina. And I don't think she made it in time to hear that. It's something to give her a hard time about. She does so much for this congregation in many different ways, and supports me, and gives me the criticism I need and the love I need to keep going. And all that is very important. I'm also grateful for our board of trustees who continue to meet and do the work of this congregation, the day-to-day work, with great joy. And there's a wonderful sense of camaraderie in our board meetings. There are certainly difficult things to share and talk about, but this board is just a wonderful group of people doing the work with you in mind, but also with a sense of purpose and hope. So I'm grateful for our board of trustees. I want to remind you of the concert this afternoon at 4 o'clock. The Pavilion Concert Series with resident artists from Opera Naples. It promised to be an incredible concert right here in the sanctuary. If you were here last year, just tell everybody how great that was for that performance. Soaring Voices, but we had one of the residents here with us last week, and so 4 o'clock. I think there's some refreshments to be had.
3:30 is a reception, just in case you want to go to a game to see a game.
3:30 is the reception. So you get started on the pregame. But you have some incredible music while you play. There's a new exhibit in the gallery, so you'll go down there. You'll notice a few posters in the foyer, which I just noticed this morning, celebrating Black History Month. And on this Wednesday, our second of 6 Progressive Voices lectures takes place here with wine and cheese at 6:30 and a presentation at 7 with Mike Savarese from Florida Gulf Coast University Water Project, talking about coastal resilience. So that should be a wonderful thing too. There may be other things that I remember during the course of the service that I'll remind you of, but in the moment, I would invite Cliff to come forward. Great to see you back as our worship associates, and you won't see and more today. So welcome.
Thanks, Tony. And good morning, all, and for all here in the congregation, for those of you out on the patio, and those watching at home, we're so glad to have you here. After the service, you can enjoy a glorious day with a quick walk, maybe a short round of golf or a pickleball, and then you can have a quick lunch, and then you can come back for a little bit of opera, and then join me for a nap. Well, actually, not join me; it'd be awfully crowded. But I need a nap before Super Bowl games. So let me welcome all of you, old friends and new, sitting in the house. And we especially are thankful for those who are with us for the first or the 17th time. We hope you'll find comfort, connection, and love here, because that's what we're all about. Please join us in the pavilion after the service for coffee and camaraderie. So we're going to continue today with Black History Week. In the last service, Tony expressed the joy and gratitude of the many great things that our Black brothers and sisters have brought to us in the past. And today we're going to remember some of the dark sides of slavery that serve to remind us of the horrible abuses in our past, and hopefully teach us so that we can avoid painful divisiveness in the future. So be ready for that. That's the undeniable history part of the Black History Month. So now let's relax and settle ourselves into this time of worship with the prayer.
To give thanks for those who bring warmth and love to our days, to accept with humble grace the gift of life. We know we are on pilgrimage here, but for a brief time. Let us open ourselves here, now, to the process of becoming more whole, in living more fully, in giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth. Let's join in our chalice lighting response that you'll see on the screen. May this flame stir our hearts and minds. The early poverty to grow in mind, spirit, by the circle, each justice and love. And let's rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn. Morning has come. It's number 1000 as the first hymn in the teal. Well, patience, he's worked on a presentation for you that could have been a lot longer. Well, maybe it was. That had within it some real passion about our current situation, but we have sort of created something that is more meaningful to this month that we're celebrating. So I'm grateful for Cliff Weiss.
Thanks, John. We don't? Okay, great. So we're going to continue here, as Tony suggested, with Black History Month, which was downgraded last week by the new administration, you may know, and which shall still be observed by this congregation and around the world. Please forgive me for a brief, very simplified review of some major historical points to be remembered. Slavery in Florida began with the arrival of the Spanish in 1513, but the docking of a Dutch ship in the colony of Virginia, carrying about 20 enslaved Americans, marked the beginning of institutionalized slavery in North America. Slavery grew significantly throughout the next 2 centuries, primarily to work the cotton fields and the other cash crops in the South. The transatlantic slave trade forcibly captured and transported millions of Africans with devastating loss of life during the Middle Passage. We're all familiar with this important, devastating story and its implications in our society, including the Civil War. So in the interest of time, allow me to fast forward to a couple of key events that led to the eventual winding down of the slave trade in the southern United States in the mid-19th century. First, Congress passed the Act prohibiting importation of slaves in 1808. This law made it illegal to bring enslaved individuals into the U.S. from abroad, even though illegal smuggling continued for years. Second, the Civil War was a major turning point. The Union's victory and Emancipation Proclamation declared freedom for enslaved people in Confederate states. And the 13th Amendment abolished slavery nationwide in 1865, a few months after President Lincoln's assassination. These events, coupled with rising abolitionist movements and economic changes, brought an end to the legal framework of slavery in the United States. But while the laws may have been changed, many in the defeated South continue to consider Blacks as an underclass at best, resulting in racial inequality and frequent violence, including thousands of non-judicial lynchings for minor infractions, and sometimes really nothing at all.
In 1922, Charles Atkins, a 15-year-old boy, was burned alive by a white mob of 1,000 people in Washington, Georgia. Jesse Thornton was lynched in Laverne, Alabama in 1940 for addressing a white police officer as Mr.
There were instances, we have photographs of entire families hanging from the same tree branch. Can you imagine the hate that calls for such extreme and obscene civic action? The decade following the Civil War is often referred to as Reconstruction. It involved significant efforts to integrate formerly enslaved African Americans into society with rights and protections, but it faced substantial opposition and was therefore slow to be fully implemented. The establishment of Jim Crow laws after Reconstruction brought enforced racial segregation and made it more difficult for Blacks to create generational wealth. Freed Blacks were often imprisoned for vagrants. Over time, the effort to gradually integrate and accept African Americans more fully in public life advanced. The Jim Crow period also saw the most extrajudicial lynchings in our history, as we shall see. A couple of years ago, Trish and I took a week-long trip to review U.S. civil rights history in Montgomery and Selma. The trip was, for us, one of the most important and memorable events of our many travels. It was a gorgeous, sunny time, quiet with very few tourists midweek, which gave us time to read and absorb the indignity and inhumanity of the era. Selma, Rosa Parks, the bus boycott, the Legacy Museum, and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, informally known as the Lynching Memorial, which commemorates the Black victims of non-judicial lynchings across the South. The 8-acre National Lynching Museum on a verdant knoll near the original slave market in Montgomery is amazing. It is at once a glorious open-air monument to the murdered victims and their families. It is architecturally inspiring, awesome in its content, and incredibly dramatic in its representation of thousands of hanged Black men and women who were never charged or convicted of anything. And it stands as a monument to the struggle, faced by so many Black families imported against their will as chattel. The memorial consisted of a pavilion. The memorial consists of a pavilion on a grassy square with 805 hanging steel rectangles representing each of the U.S. counties, mostly in southern states, where a documented lynching took place. Each coffin-sized metal box is engraved with the names and dates of every known lynching in that county. By studying records in counties across the United States, researchers have documented almost 4,400 lynchings in the post-Reconstruction era between 1877 and 1950. Like many of you, I was already born. Over the years, Hollywood has tended to portray lynchings as driven by perceived insults of whites by Negroes, as Blacks would call that. Researchers reveal that most lynchings were for economic considerations, such as business competition, or over wages, or for some fraudulent accusation of theft. These extrajudicial murders were often committed on the spur of the moment, sometimes infused with alcohol and trivialized with a party atmosphere. They were so vicious that if the mob ascertained that the victim, the intended victim, had fled, they sometimes raped and murdered his wife and burned the house down. Occasionally, the mob participants would face charges, but fewer than 1% were ever convicted. To be fair, there were cases of Black-on-Black lynchings and during this period, and white-on-Hispanic murders as well. It was all completely lawless. Even though Trish and I considered ourselves to be reasonably aware of the brutality of slavery in the South, it is difficult to describe the horror, the savagery, the inhumanity that the Montgomery trip revealed to us. I admit that it brought both of us to tears more than once, and it will forever be in our hearts and minds. This plaque at the memorial says it all.
For the hanged and beaten, for the shot, drowned, and burned, for the tortured, tormented, and terrorized, for those abandoned by the rule of law, we will remember with hope because hopelessness is the enemy of justice. With courage, because peace requires bravery. With persistence, because justice is a constant struggle. With faith, because we shall overcome.
No. No, unfortunately, equality has not yet been reached in our country 150 years later. That is why Black History Month is so important and will continue to be recognized here at UCGN. We cannot forget or erase or rewrite our racist history. We must face it, embrace it, and learn from it, keeping Dr. King's teaching and vision alive for future generations.
In this difficult time in our lives, we also continue with the normal day-to-day ups and downs, those joys and sorrows that come to us both as we make them happen, as they come to us without warning. If you have a personal joy or sorrow that you'd like to share this morning, please raise your hand, tell us your name, and briefly what's in your heart.
Vincent Keys, Dina, I know we have some African Americans that are still unknown here. I was reminded this morning, but last 2 weeks ago, the Collier County Commissioner's Office finally has given us the green light to confirm that the 8 bodies that are on the most busiest intersection in Collier County has been identified as being a historically significant grave site. And so we've come up a long way, but names are still unknown. So there's going to be a genealogy study. We'll have to try and find out who they are and possibly make the connection between their names and the family members who probably don't know where their members are, because a lot of times people were killed and family members. Fabulous.
But I built one too. Grateful for those joys, deep sorrows, for continued work to uncover our history. For all of you here, for our guests, let's join together in silent meditation and spoken meditation. Spirit of life, we take these moments to sit together in silence. Grateful the arms, eyes, and the ears, those who join us on our journeys. Hear that still small voice within. that longing for something better, something more. Spirit of love, help us hear the call to change and to have the courage to take the first step. Help us see that our way is blessed, whether the path be rough or smooth. And when we journey from this place, let us open ourselves to this world, to living more fully. Let us remember those who have gone before, upon whose shoulders we stand. Let us remember those who will follow us in this life. And may their spirits travel with us through our days and through our work. May we find courage, peace, joy, of journeying on together. Share a little more silence.
From the Ark Pilgrimage, Seeker's Guide to Making Travel Safe. When we no longer know where to turn, our real journey has just begun. At that crossroads moment, a voice calls to our pilgrim soul. The time has come to set out for the sacred ground, the mountain, the temple, the ancestral home that will stir our heart and restore our sense to wonder. For millennia, this cry in the heart of embarking upon a meaningful journey has been answered by pilgrimage, a transformative journey to a sacred center. It calls for a journey to a holy site associated with gods, saints, or heroes, or to a natural setting imbued with spiritual power, or to a revered temple to seek counsel. To people the world over, pilgrimage is a spiritual exercise, an act of devotion to find a source or healing, and even to perform a penance. Always, it is a journey of risk and renewal. For a journey without a challenge has no meaning. One without a purpose has no soul.
In African American spirituals, the choir is doing today, as we did last week. We always need to remember who wrote those and what circumstances. The lives that they were living, terrors that they faced. Many of us cannot know, can never know. So we sing honor what we can't know. My own civil rights pilgrimage came in 2013. I was in seminary, also working as an intern in the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Concord, Massachusetts. And I heard through the grapevine that the Unitarian Universalist College of Social Justice was going to be offering a civil rights pilgrimage through the South. Now, I'd like to sort of claim that my interest in going was purely one from my heart, and to a certain degree it was, but there was also a certain jealousy involved. My son, Nate, in one of his coming of age exercises, actually a trip, went with our youth group and a couple of other youth groups on a pilgrimage to Selma, Montgomery, and Birmingham. And my wife Ann got to go along as a chaperone, and I didn't. I wanted to go. And so I wheedled my way, I pleaded, I made myself obnoxious to the head of the College of Social Justice, who finally realized that she didn't have another leader to go. So, okay, you can go. So in July of 2013, I got on a plane and met up with 13 teenagers, young teenagers, and one other incredible leader, Reverend Pope Johnson, in Atlanta, and we spent a week together. We went to a service at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, very uplifting experience. We visited the Carter Center. We visited MLK's home there, his dad's home. And then we took off. We stopped in Tuskegee. There's a poster out there about the Tuskegee Airmen. Incredible story. And all the while we're learning from both our driver, Joseph Selman, who was one of the children who was in the Children's Crusade, or Children's March in Birmingham, and others. And in Tuskegee, one of our young people asked how these Black men, knowing the story, could be so patriotic. And yet they were. Served our country with incredible bravery, courage, and fortitude. In Montgomery, we went to the Rosa Parks Museum, visited the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church where Martin Luther King served, and the parsonage there, that place where he went through some incredible moments of fear and anxiety, and then uplifting hope. Along the way, as I said, we met individuals that were part of the movement, veterans of the civil rights movement. Shirley Cherry, Tina Vernon, people whose names we don't know, but who were there. We had dinner at the Montgomery Church, and on our way to Selma, we stopped at the memorial for Viola Liuzzo, a Unitarian woman from Detroit who went to Selma for the march and was murdered transporting people back and forth from Montgomery to Selma. In Selma, we met with Joanne Bland, another veteran of the movement, who was arrested for demonstrating 14 times before the age of 14, marched across the bridge on Bloody Sunday, and again with Martin Luther King Jr., who witnessed the brutality, but who had a joy of life and a desire to tell a story. She talked about women in the movement: Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Diane Nash. She brought us to S.E. Maxwell's house in Selma, another veteran who served us a home cooked meal. Incredible. And she toured with us through the National Voting Rights Museum, which she helped found, just on the other side of the bridge. There's so much to think about in Selma, so much history. We met with the sheriff, Selma, who at the time we visited was African American. Wow. And we had memories of growing up in that place. We joined with other Unitarian Universalists at their congregations, both in Birmingham and later again in Atlanta, in Montgomery. And in those places, once again, we were just overwhelmed with our welcome and also with the community that was growing there among our Unitarian Universalist brothers and sisters and the civil rights community. In Birmingham, we were able to meet a couple of other veterans of the movement and of the Children's Crusade, Ricky Powell and Gwen Davis, who told us their stories. And then with Joseph Selman, we walked out onto the Ingram Park in downtown Birmingham, that place where we've all seen the images of dogs and hoses. It's difficult to explain, as I think Cliff found out, and Lena knows, anybody who's been there knows the impact of immersing yourself in a story that we don't know well enough. Sure, we've watched the documentaries. We've seen some of the pictures and videos. And unless you go, unless you take that pilgrimage, hard to understand. But what's powerful, what's hopeful is what happened there. It's not all horror. What you get to witness, what you get to see, what you get to hear, the power of a people desiring and making change. All the filters and barriers you have set up to protect yourself fall away. You're forced to face a reality that can't help but change you. And you're never quite the same. There are memories that won't let go. It is, it's incredible to stand here and share just details and to feel that feeling wrong. And still, you don't know the reality exposed to the
Sorry about that. So we are so happy to have all of you here. Today is a day of generosity. We obviously appreciate all of the funds that help us keep this organization going, and we look forward to receiving your generosity today. We are not here today, but reading elsewhere, you can send a check to the address on the screen, or you can visit the website at uunaples.org. Thank you.
Folks not to see or acknowledge or act on the racial violence of 350 years, even when it erupted during Jim Crow with the lynching of over 4,000 men and women. Change came far too late for Black Americans, and still the road continues. A testament to how difficult change is when systems of oppression get established in law and customs. We must remember now, because we need to understand that change takes courage and camaraderie. That standing up to oppression takes leadership and planners and doers. That it takes many acts of courage, small and large. When those Birmingham students found the courage to skip school for a day and march, it was only to realize that they would need more courage to face the dogs and the hoses. In the end, however, it was their courage and their actions that began to turn the tide of oppression. Not seen, not acknowledging, not acting is a recipe for disaster. This nation will be better, far better, when we learn to turn to each other rather than on each other. When we fully honor our shared history and celebrate our rich diversity. The journey continues. Let's rise together and sing our closing hymn, number 168. One more step, words will be on the screen.
We will take one more step. We'll say one more. We'll say one more. It's come by everyone sing on.
In the words of A. Philip Randolph, whose portrait sits in our foyer this week, freedom is never given, it is won. Justice is never granted, it is exacted. Go in peace, go in love. Have a wonderful day.
Enjoy the day.